Well, if we'll give you a little reading from Evagris, who says, man fell from the angelic state in human behaviour, and from the latter they further lower themselves to the base condition of demons. But when they rise again, they pass through the degrees from which they have fallen. And this is something I've been studying, obviously, over the years with theosophy and anthroposophy, because they say, and I believe this myself, that humans came down from the divine, and as we came down through the hierarchy system, we became angels, well, became archangels and angels, and went through all them, that hierarchy of, thrones, powers, and such like. There's like, I think 9 hierarchies in the angelic realm to go through, coming down to humans, which is the matter world, where all the angels and the archangels and such like are in a spiritual, etheric type of realm. And we're on this bottom realm of earth, where below that would be probably the demonic. But when we've come down to the earth world, the matter world, it's like a U or a V. We've come down, 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 down. We're now going to try and ascend our way back up, which is why we're all doing this work on ourselves, so that we can evolve into the next stage, which would be angels again, and archangels, and then back on up to the divine. So it's all an evolution process, for us, it should be, where, in this rational world that we live in, they're telling us that, no, it's always been like this, we've always been humans like this, there's no such thing as angels and demons and such like. He says here in this one that we can lower ourselves down to becoming demonic beings. And I wonder if that's just like the base level of humans, or whether demonic entities are interfering with human progress. I tend towards the latter. I think the demonics are trying to stop us, to avert us from going upwards. So they send all this temptation towards us, which I believe Steiner says is a kind of part of the lesson. It sounds like a trick, doesn't it? But it's a test whether we fall for what the demonic is trying to make us succumb to, the temptations. And if we can avoid that or see through that, which is part of working on ourselves, is that we begin to see through what the dark side is throwing at us. And do we rise ourselves above it? I'm not sure. I think more a case of that we become impartial to this kind of thing. I'm a strong believer we have an angel and a demon on our shoulders. The angel's telling us, the good things to be doing to help us with our evolution, and the demonics telling us bad things and temptating things and trying to distract us from it. Instead it's trying to bring us back down into their dark realms. So over the years, obviously, I've been reading different books and philosophies and theologies and Gnostic texts, and it's quite interesting to see some of the texts that were all written that were banned by the Christian church, for example. The Gnostic texts, they have quite a more spiritual, I think, esoteric way of looking at things, where the main religions are just trying to tell us, you're all sinners, so you just got to come to church and listen to us, where we're trying to work on ourselves individually so that we can become evolved beings. We want to work our way back up the hierarchy so that we return to the divine. Gurdjieff would say that we're working on ourselves to develop our next soul body for what happens after we die, which would take us into them other realms, because when you've built your Keshan body for your soul to go into, you would then be in the different realm, into the next stage, and hopefully that will then bring you more opportunities to develop yourself even further, to go higher up the evolution. Or if you don't work on yourselves in your Keshan body after your death, you'll be coming back down here. But I would think that those that have developed their Keshan body, because that's really only done by people who work on themselves, the sleep people, the materialistic people wouldn't be doing anything like that. So when they die, they'll probably get caught back up in the reincarnation cycle. So we have the demonics trying to deter us. We have the angelics trying to help us. And I was saying in a previous video that, you know, we can call upon them to help us. They're not going to give us all the answers. They're going to give us clues and guide us to do it, because we must still work on ourselves. I know many people want just to be given everything on a platter, but it doesn't work like that. We have to ponder on things, work upon ourselves, and understand ourselves. You know, one of the main aphorism that would be in most mystery schools would be know thyself. And I know that does deter people. People don't want to look at themselves, but we have to look at our demonic side as well as our angelic side. You know, we've all screwed up over the years, haven't we? But we've also done good things, which we know is the right way to go. Everything counterbalances at some point, but at the same time we need to make that counterbalance within ourselves. Maurice Nicoll talks about the scales, and that, you know, they swing from left to right depending on how we're being. One side would be the dark side of us and the other side would be the light side of us, but we want to be balanced in the middle. We want to understand our dark side and our light side, our male and our female. I recently did a talk with General Lee for Subconscious Realms about Baphomet, and how people go, oh, Baphomet, the devil. Well, Baphomet, the statue, from an esoteric point of view and not from the satanic tribes, is all about balance of the male and the female, the dark and the light, the up and the down. Which is why I find it quite an interesting statue to ponder upon, because it helps me to understand the two sides and to try and bring it all into balance. And that's what we're doing with this work in this life. I did one of the little shorts was about, you know, is man a fallen angel or a rising ape? Well, in some ways it's both, because we are the fallen angel that came down to this earth, and now we're rising back up again into the next stage. So, unfurl your angelic wings and go forward, peoples. So this is from Ephagrius. What one needs is an understanding of conflicts reached by experience, that experience of which the wise and sensible have often been confounded, and which comes to fools through action. Just as it is not possible that archery be taught amongst crowds and in the streets, but rather in a place apart. In the same way, they cannot reach anyone skilled in spiritual conflicts and how to race well towards the divine goal, and to learn skill in controlling the faults and the science of spiritual navigation on this terrible ocean, and to understand many stratagems. And that's something that we've all been struggling with over the years. We're trying to do this spiritual navigation, and it is a tough path because everything comes racing into our minds. Anyway, I shall continue. Until a man shall dwell in constant quietude and in retreat from everything, by means of which the mind becomes empty of or ceases from constant prayer, he who does not do thus shall fall. The cause of this quietude is in 3 periods. And I just want to add here, this is very like what Steiner says, Rudolf Steiner gives these 3. Labour is the initial period, and to this first period belongs fear, and that grief which results from the recollection of previous things. And to that second period belong encouragement and the manifold consolation whereby the wise penitent approaches divine favours by virtue of the purity which he receives from weeping and penitence. When he shall complete this former period with manifold labours by the help of Christ, and shall begin to prepare for the second period, the sign of his repentance will be turned to exaltation, although he does not wish it to be so, because he fears that it is perhaps an illusion. And many of us, I'm just going to say, do go through this spiritual path and then discover that we're not sure whether we're doing the right thing. But we've got to feel in our hearts and our solar plexus. And the sign of this is that hope begins to enter his spirit, and by virtue of his repentance, consolation begins to increase little by little. Then, from time to time, thoughts which make him joyful stir within him, and he sees within himself that he can easily cleanse the mind of wandering. These things come about when he enters completely into this second period, when his thought is changed into another which does not resemble the former. Then those things which occur to his thoughts are not of his nature, and he begins to pay heed to the mystical words which are hidden in the Psalms. Love a psalm. For sweetness begins to be mingled with his service, both with his fasting and with the words of his worship, and with the other labours of his way of life. And as soon as he begins to pray, his limbs become composed without his will in it, and his thoughts begin to be collected, for they themselves realize how to bring forth something which is above the struggle. And he sees aright that the ship of his mind is going day by day in growth towards improvement. These things, together with other yet greater things, belong to the middle period, until by the grace of Christ a man arises to that course of life which is above his nature, which is what we're attaining to be. We're attaining to be above our nature, coming from the human nature and rising up to the angelic. And of course this can obviously be from any type of theology or religion. You don't have to do this from a Christian point of view. This can apply to any type of spiritual, soulful study on oneself.